So, I've done my fair share of writing. I recently finished my master's degree, which tells you I was in school for a long time. I did a lot of research papers, a lot of essays, a lot of writing projects for school. I also write creatively in my free time short stories, poetry, many unfinished attempts at writing a novel, and I also do a fair amount of writing at work. And so, between all those different types of writing, one thing that I have found that is always in common among them is that my worst enemy when I'm trying to write is a blank page. It just stares at you, doesn't it? It stares at you and it taunts you and it says, "You don't know what to write. You don't know how to get started. You're never going to finish this because you're never going to put the first word down." But that's not true, and of course, there are ways of overcoming the blank page. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how to get past that blank page, how to get a first draft down, no matter what it is that you're writing. So the first thing that I would recommend, and I know that this is going to not sit well with some people, but outlining. Or don't even think of it as outlining, think of it as making a list. You know that these are the topics that you took notes on when you did your research, and you need to get them into a research paper, and it needs to be 8 to 10 pages, and it needs to have at least X number of sources and an intro and a conclusion and an abstract. Okay, that's a daunting prospect, right? But you know what you did research on, and you know what some of the topics were, right? So start by making a list of those topics, and then put them in the order that you want. And then you can just take them one at a time and write that paper and worry about the flow, the transitions, the intro and conclusion, all of that later once you've gotten the content written. But making an outline can make that so much easier. The same goes for other types of writing. If you know that you want your characters in your short story to start off doing this, and then this big thing happens to them, and then they react in certain ways, and it all builds up to this main event, and you know how you want it to end, you can write all of those things down, and then you won't forget them, and then you can just go back and fill in the details, the dialogue, the description, the individual moments along the way that were not big picture enough to make that original list. Another point, and this specifically relates to research papers or essays, formal writing for school, is write the introduction last. This was one of my biggest strategies writing research papers and essays and other types of formal writing for school. It was so difficult for me to figure out, how do I introduce this topic before I know everything that I'm going to say about it? Yes, I've done some research, and yes, I have some thoughts, but how do I go from blank page to here is the paragraph that tells you what I am going to tell you? Well, for me, what worked is to do that last. Write the paper, write the conclusion, get it all kind of in a reasonable order, and be sure that that is what I'm going to say, and then go back, read through it, and write the introduction as if I needed to tell somebody, okay, this is what I'm about to tell you. Because that's really what an introduction for a paper like that is. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that I talked a lot about outlining, but there are other ways of doing that as well. Some people don't work well with outlines. Personally, I like to have a plan. I'm an organized person. I like to know how things are going to go. I like to know what I need to do and have a checklist, and I can just, check boxes off of the checklist as I go. But for some people, that really doesn't work. And so another strategy that you can use is to just view that first draft as a nothing draft. Like, you will go back and rewrite the whole thing if you have to, but you're just going to get thoughts down. And that, I will say, I have used as well. Not quite as much as the outlining thing, but even like within a paragraph, you can do that. You don't know how you want to say something, just say it. Maybe it sounds wrong, maybe it's the wrong tone, maybe it's not formal enough or it's overly formal, but if you've got it down, if you've got it written, then you can go back and change the wording later. And for some people it works really well to do that for an entire essay or an entire short story or an entire novel even. I know there are people that write novels that way. I cannot wrap my head around that. But if that works for you, absolutely do it. Whatever works for you to get past that blank page. And then finally, understand that nobody ever has to see your first draft. But I'm in a class, and my professor wants to see my first draft, or my teacher, or whoever. Okay? So do a rough draft of your rough draft. That's what I did whenever I had to turn in a rough draft in college. Because I didn't want my professor to see my literal rough draft where I had insert topic sentence here some of the time, and I didn't have any transitions between the paragraphs, and I had used maybe more informal language than you should in a college paper. So I did the rough draft where I just got things written, and then I went through and I polished it up, and I didn't do like a super in-depth, let's make everything perfect kind of edit, because if they're asking for your rough draft, it's not going to be your final grade, and they're not expecting you to go to that kind of trouble. But I did want it to be to where I wasn't going to be embarrassed by it, and to where, usually that is for the purposes of feedback. I wanted the feedback to be about my content or my general structure or overarching things that I can do to improve my writing in the big picture, not about you need to learn where to put your commas, or you need to learn how this word is spelled, or you need topic sentences on your paragraphs, or things like that that I knew to take care of, but just maybe missed when I was getting that sloppy first draft out. So if you have to show your rough draft to somebody, do an even more rough draft that you do before that, and make an editing pass before you show it to somebody, because knowing that nobody will ever see that draft unless you actually want them to is just such a liberating feeling. Anyway, so I hope this helped to get past that scary blank page. If you liked this video and you'd like to see more like it, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I post once a week talking about reading, writing, literary concepts, and more.